Have you ever wondered how to paint clouds in watercolor? Well, there are so many different ways, and in this video, I'm going to show you 3 ways that I like to paint clouds and how to apply those 3 ways into 3 different landscapes. For this project, I'm using 140-pound cold press watercolor paper, my letter sparrow handmade paints, and my Polina Bright mop brush size 2. The first clouds are what I call paper towel clouds. So how we do that is we wet the paper with just clean water. You can see at an angle how it glistens a little bit, so it's not overly wet, but it's definitely wet. So I've wet the whole entire paper, and then I'm using this beautiful bright cyan blue to paint the entire area of the paper. I add water to the paper first because it's a little bit easier to move the paint around the paper and get a more consistent blend, even though I don't mind some of those inconsistencies. So then you'll take your paper towel, kind of bunch it up into a group, and press it down on your paper to remove some of the paint. So it's really important to do this step while it is still wet so that you can reveal the white of the paper. But I love that it's not totally white and it looks a little bit wispy, like it's a bright clear day and you've got some wispy clouds in the sky. So that's usually what I use this technique for. And then you can take some of that paint and add some darker contrasting color underneath the clouds for more dimension. Clean your brush, kind of dab it off a little bit, and then go through and kind of smooth everything out to continue that wispy cloud look. Now I'm going to show you how I would apply that to a landscape. So I've got about 2/3, maybe a little bit more of my painting totally wet because I'm leaving the bottom dry for the landscape. And I'm adding my bright blue cyan color. You can make it darker towards the top and lighter towards the bottom because of atmospheric perspective. It's going to be lighter towards the bottom because that is the farthest area away from you. And I've got my paper towel bunched up and I am creating the clouds. Also remember that with perspective, the clouds that are at the top of your landscape are going to be bigger because they're closer to you. The clouds towards the bottom of where you're placing the clouds towards your horizon line are going to be smaller and less distinct, less intense. So I'm kind of doing more of the light wispy clouds towards the bottom and then the heavier, brighter white clouds towards the top. So it's just a difference in the amount of pressure that I'm using. Now I'm coming back with that cyan color, a little bit more pigmented, to add some dimension. So you can create clouds using negative space, which I did towards the top. You can see there's kind of another cloud peeking out just by painting around some whitish areas. And I'm creating dimension and depth around the clouds towards the bottom. Again, once you paint those darker areas, they might seem really intense, so just clean your brush, dry it off a little bit, and then you can go through and fluff everything out. It gives it a really nice wispy cloud look when you do that. Since this video's whole entire focus is on the clouds, I'm not going to go into too much detail about how I'm painting the landscapes. I just kept them really simple using different colors. This one was more of like a desert theme, but let me know in the comments if you want full tutorials on these. But here is the final product for this bright day landscape. Moving on to cloud number 2, which I call negative clouds. For this type of clouds, we're going to start the same way with number 1, where we wet the entire paper until it's got that glistening look. And I'm using a magenta color to start. And the reason I call this negative clouds is because we are doing negative painting where we are painting around the clouds. So instead of painting the clouds, we are painting the sky around the clouds. So I'm taking the magenta paint and I'm moving it around the shape of my clouds. So clouds can be any shape. So just let this kind of flow and do its thing. And I just take that first initial color. You can use different colors. In the example where I do the landscape, I'll do even more colors. And then once you've got that initial layer of color down, you can go in with a darker color to do kind of the same thing we did in the first one, where we are creating contrast and depth underneath the clouds. And then we can rinse off our brush, dab it off a little bit, and use a drier brush to kind of fluff everything out and create that fluffy cloud shape. But in this example, the paper stays white the entire time because we are doing a negative painting of the clouds. Now we are going to apply that to a landscape, and again we are painting with just clean water, about 2/3 of the paper. For this one I wanted to do a sunrise, so I started with yellow down towards the bottom because the sun is coming up, and you can see I'm already starting to make little forms of white clouds, but I switched colors to an orange, and then they'll gradually get up to a pink and darker as we go higher. So again, I'm just doing the negative painting around shapes of clouds so that the paper remains white for the clouds. And I've switched to a reddish pink color here, and I'm continuing to kind of make these fluffy strokes with my mop brush, just kind of dabbing in, because since the paper is wet, it's kind of doing the fluffing out work for me. I also don't want there to be too stark of a difference between the three colors, so I'm just going through with my brush and kind of making sure the colors blend together a little bit more, bringing some of the pink down into the yellow and under the orange, which also creates that contrast under the orange level clouds, if you know what I mean. But it's really important to keep some of that really bright yellow because that's going to really look like our sun is popping through over our horizon. And again, now I'm bringing in some of that darker purpley color to add contrast to kind of the pink layer level of clouds, because the higher we go, the darker the sky is. Again, really simple landscape. I kept everything in the area where the sun is coming up really bright, but I can show another tutorial of this in a longer video as well. This landscape only took me about 5 minutes, and here is the finished product. So the last cloud technique I call wet on wet clouds, and that's because I'm actually going to be painting the paper with all different kinds of colors. This one is more of like a sunset vibe, but I'm doing any kind of pinks and oranges and yellows that I want to, and then I'm going to paint the clouds on top of the watercolor while it is still wet, which is why I call it wet on wet clouds. So now that I have my base colored layer done, I'm mixing a really dark indigo color, and I'm doing this kind of scrubbing motion to get that fluffy cloud shape and just dropping these clouds right onto the paper. Because the paper is not too wet, it's just in that glistening stage I showed you earlier. They don't bleed and blend too much, but they blend enough that they look really cloudy and fluffy, which is just so cute. And remember that clouds are bigger and darker towards the top of your painting. So as I go towards the bottom, even in this example painting, I'm doing smaller clouds. So you can do, different kinds of swipes. You can do different, you can see I do like little swipes with the side of my brush here and there, and really just get into that wispy cloud feel. So I did in this one start with a little bit of water on my paper, which is totally fine. I just didn't want the colors to be too watered down. So because I added some color before, I can make it a little bit brighter, but I really wanted this to be a deep sunset. So I've got the yellow and the orange and the bright pink going. I'm really just dabbing in the colors and making them as bright and bold as I want to, not really worrying too much about where they are. I didn't want that blue to overtake the clouds, so I turned it into a purple. I just wanted that overall sunset feel, really dark at the top and light at the bottom. And now, again, while it is still wet, because these are the wet on wet clouds, I'm going in with that fluffy kind of scrubbing motion, adding my fluffy clouds. And again, just remember that clouds towards the top of your painting are typically bigger. I guess not always, but typically bigger because they are closer to you, and then the clouds farther away from you are closer to your horizon line. And so really just have fun with the shape of your clouds. I mean, your clouds could be really any shape because we've all looked up in the sky and pretended we've seen any kind of shape. So this is a chance to really have fun and play with your landscapes. And I just wanted to have that organic feel so it didn't look too contrived. But then I wanted also to make sure that I had a few small clouds towards the bottom, and it really gave that distant, far away feel to the whole entire landscape. Because it's a sunset, I kept my landscape dark, almost like a silhouette, and I had a little water feature, so I had the water reflecting the sunset above it, and this is the final piece. And that is it. Our three different types of clouds. We have our wet on wet clouds, our negative clouds, and the paper towel clouds. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration of three different types of watercolor clouds and that you try this out and tag me. I would love to see. I'll see you all next time. Bye.